Welcome to the Union Federation podcast. Here we discuss both Star Trek and the Orville here on the Fandom Podcast Network. My name is Kevin. I will be your captain, and we're really excited because this is our ongoing podcast here discussing Star Trek Q episodes. And this is Union Federation episode 234, Star Trek Q episodes, the episode Q List from 1993, season 1 episode of Deep Space Nine. And we got a lot to get to here, guys. We hope you've been enjoying this series. We're going live every Monday night. We took a little break last week, but we're back here checking out the Star Trek Q fan collective here. Hope you guys have gone back and listened and watched our previous shows. We got more coming up as well. This is a Union Federation, which can be found on the Fandom Podcast Network and the BQN. And if you're watching our live YouTube here, please, first of all, join the chat. Please let us know what you think. Throw out some questions and comments. We'll share them here on the show. But also hit our QR code there on the live feed of our video. It'll take us to our FPN website with all of our other great podcasts. So check that out. But let's introduce our crew on this Union Federation starship. With me, back from another I guess, Borg dimension, I want to, first of all, welcome, well, of course, our counselor and second in charge here. Please welcome the lovely Miss Amy Nelson. What's going on?
Well, hello. It's so good to be back.
Yeah, good to have you. Good to have you. So we're going to have a good show tonight, but we have others that we are going to be joining our crew here today. With me, as always, of course, is our founder of the, co-founder, I'm going to say, of the FPN, but he's actually the big boss. I let him have it sometimes. And also the current cleaner of the P Corner. Please welcome Mr. Kyle Wagner.
I've been gone from this podcast for a few weeks because of several things, and it's good I'm back because I'm looking around, and much like DS9, it's become a very gray place. I'm here to add the color back.
There you go. Now, we haven't given him a title yet. He's still our special guest ambassador, so we'll give him that. We'll have to give him a nickname because he's been with us here since day one. Please welcome Mr. Gary Akers. What's going on, buddy?
Wait. No, you don't get a nickname until you've survived your first season of Union Federation.
Very good. I just want to say, Peldar Joy, which is Bajoran, the Bajoran greeting during the Gratitude Festival, and I figure that's appropriate for tonight's episode.
Well, it's true. I mean, we have been running these episodes of Q episodes, all TNG episodes, but we are making a visit to Deep Space Nine, and I actually, I watched them on Paramount Plus as well, but I got the actual DVDs here, and I had to go in and check out the episode, see if there's anything interesting or new. But no special features on this episode that I found anyway. But I got a nice DS9 collection over here. Came in handy. So yeah, I'm going to be talking and visiting Deep Space Nine for this Q. We had someone in the comments here. We had Rick James. Yes. Okay. So he's saying loser something there. So there we go. Are we getting our first spam there, Kyle? I wonder if that's going on.
Not our first spam, but it happens.
Well, guys, let's go ahead and just give a quick little tease what's been happening here on the Fandom Podcast Network's Union Federation, if you're a fan of the Orville or Star Trek here. First of all, we recently, of course, covered all the 2-part episodes of TNG, and we also did the Orville Crew Profile podcast. So if you're a fan of the Orville, we covered each of the main crew members, including the final episode where we discussed a lot of the guest stars, which also included a lot of Star Trek alumni in front of the camera and behind the camera. We also gave our thoughts on the movie Section 31, ended the Lower Deck Season 5 send-off, which was a lot of fun. And recently we covered the Season 3 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. And we are discussing the Star Trek Q fan collective here, guys. And I'll get into that in a second. But we're a little bit, I guess, halfway through this, maybe a little bit more. We've got a lot of episodes. A lot more recent one we did was True Q. And we got more coming up as well, including back to the Enterprise crew for a couple. And then we're going to be visiting Voyager as well with the 3-episode story arc they had there with Q. I want to give a good shout out to my friend Joe Caroni, who provided this wonderful Q print back here if you're watching the video. And he's a big Star Trek fan as well as Star Wars fan. And go check out his website at joecoroni.com. He's got some great science fiction art, fan art there of a lot of your favorite shows and such. So anyway, as we continue here, guys, this is the Star Trek Q Fan Collective. And what I'm talking about is this DVD I'm holding right here in my hand. Came out in 2007, and we are celebrating all of these episodes that are on here. If you haven't already, make sure you check this out. It is a fun collection here. It's all of the Q episodes from 1987 TNG all the way through Deep Space Nine, and of course, Voyager through 2001. All right. Well, if you want a little refreshment, check out our first episode where we did a counter at Farpoint. And if you do that, then you can also check out our awesome discussion on the history of the Q. And we had a lot of fun, too, calling the Q hotline as well. So make sure you do that. Okay, let's go ahead and get with our first away mission. All right. First way we have here is, of course, we are discussing Deep Space Nine Q-less, and this is the Admiral's Log episode synopsis. And Miss Amy Nelson, I was wondering if you could read the plot synopsis, gives us any information on, when it aired and all that kind of stuff as well.
All right. Well, this is in season 1 of Deep Space Nine, episode 7. And it aired February 7th of 1993. Where were you? And the IMDb rating is a 6.7, which I find interesting.
It's a little bit lower than what we've been seeing on the TNG episodes, I've noticed.
Right.
So,
Yes. We have Lieutenant Jadzia Dax returns from the Gamma Quadrant in her runabout with a woman that Chief Miles O'Brien recognizes as Bosch from his time on board the Enterprise. Although the crew is unaware of his presence, Q, a nearly omnipotent prankster, has also stowed away on the runabout. During their trip back to Deep Space Nine, the vessel undergoes a series of unusual power drains. Soon after Vash's arrival, the station begins to experience similar power failures. In the meantime, Q appears to Vash, apparently infatuated with her. Although Q transported Vash to the Gamma Quadrant 2 years earlier, now she wants nothing to do with him, much to Q's annoyance. When Dr. Julian Bashir asks Vash out for dinner, a jealous Q uses his power to make Bashir fall asleep. Meanwhile, the bartender, Quark, arranges to auction off items Vash found in the Gamma Quadrant, including an unusual crystal that might fetch a high price. O'Brien spots Q on the station, recognizes him from the Enterprise, and warns Commander Sisko, speculating that Q might be responsible for the power drains. When confronted, Q denies any wrongdoing, although he offers no alternative explanation. As the power drains become more severe, the station begins to be pulled toward the nearby wormhole. After a little needling, Q challenges Sisko to a boxing match, and suddenly they are both wearing antique-style boxing costumes. A few punches are thrown by Q, but Sisko is able to block the last punch and knock Q down with 1-2 punch, shocking Q. At the auction, Vash's crystal receives bids in excess of 1,000 bars of gold-pressed latinum. Casually joining the bid process, Q ups the bidding to 2,501 bars before bidding 1 million. Soon after, however, the source of the power losses is traced to the crystal itself. The crystal is quickly beamed into space before it can destroy the station. Once outside, it transforms into an alien life form and travels into the wormhole. After the incident, Bashir finally awakens from his slumber.
All right, it's fun. Fun to return to Deep Space Nine. Was it for you guys? Anyone?
It was
Absolutely.
interesting to return to Deep Space Nine. I love Deep Space Nine, but every once in a while I get that reminder of how much work DS9 improved from season 1, because
Hmm.
I'll get to it a little later, but there's so many missed opportunities in this episode that could have carried on through DS9, and yeah, just a little bit of that DS9 season 1 frustration.
What do you think, Gary? This is your favorite TV show of the Star Trek series, right?
It is, and clearly they're still in the kind of proto stages of the show where the actors are finding their feet on the characters are finding their chemistry with each other, and that, I think, contributes to the particular kind of energy of this particular Q episode, which I know we'll talk a little bit later.
Okay.
And then like Kyle, there was one massive missed opportunity that I wish they'd done.
We'll hit on that. What about you, Amy? What was it like going into Deep Space Nine after doing all these TNG episodes with Q?
Yeah, and I kept wondering, like, why is this Q less? Because I just didn't understand, like, with the TNG ones, they were Q, and it almost seems like the one with Corbin Burnson, like, that should be called Q less, because, like, he loses, and so then I was like, so do you guys know why this is called
Probably
Q?
because Ash wants to be Q less. I don't know.
Yeah, that's kind of my thinking.
Okay.
I was kind of thinking maybe like Alicia Silverstone would be a guest in it, since it's
right. So I was
right there.
thinking Clueless like that too.
Good stuff there. Okay. Let's go ahead and get into the bit of trivia we have going on here. Let me see. Hey, Kyle, do me a favor and go ahead and check the orientation, because on the live feed, it's showing the phone view there. I don't know if you noticed that or not.
Well, check that.
Yeah. All right. All right, let's go ahead and get into the trivia here. All right. Let's go ahead and start with the first one here. I'll go ahead and hit this one. Although gold press latinum was introduced in Deep Space Nine Season 1 past prologue 1993 episode, this is the first episode to establish that the bar is one of its monetary denominations. In the earlier episode, the value of latinum was defined by its weight. This is also the first episode in which Quark is seen dealing in latinum. I feel like, too, guys, Deep Space Nine really started bringing back money, basically, because it still is important outside of the Federation. I don't know. You guys have any thoughts on that? I'll start with you, Gary.
I think when you made a Ferengi such a central character in the show, I think this was an inevitability. When you have a race that is centered completely around economic prosperity, I mean, everything about their culture. So, yeah, it's weird though, because I mean, he runs a bar on Deep Space Nine on, whose customers basically don't, all the Federation crew don't have money, don't deal with money. So I've always wondered how that works.
Yeah. What about you, Amy? What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely like that they are, dealing a lot more than just a one-off episode of people who aren't in the Federation and how we deal with them. Because with TNG, it's always, oh, look at them. They're so backwards and they're using money still, that type of nose up in the air. And so here we're dealing with it. And yeah, here's your gold press latinum. And I have to deal with what you are because I want your services or your alcohol or whatever. So I love that they're doing that, because TNG sort of, in my opinion, had their nose up in the air.
I also feel it gives great moments to Quark throughout this series as well, so it's definitely good there. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get in the next bit of trivia. Amy, if you mind doing number 2 for us, please.
Yes. So the necklace worn by Vosh during the auction is the same necklace she wears at the reception in Cupid.
There you go.
Oh,
I didn't notice that, but if you look at the two pictures, they're like, yeah, there you go.
Nice.
Pretty cool. All right. Let's see. Kyle, do you want to hit the next one?
I can do that. The meeting between Quark and Vash contains the first reference to umox, the act of massaging a Ferengi's ears on DS9, which would become a frequent recurring theme. The term had been introduced in Menage a Trois 1990. I feel dirty now.
That was a funny scene. Good stuff there. Does feel good though. All right, I'll get the next bit of trivia here, guys. The object containing the embryonic being is the same item used for the Albany meditation crystal in Angel 1 from the TNG episode in 1988. And if you look at the picture there on the right, you see that's the leader of the ladies there with when Will Riker was more fun without the beard, according to Q.
And now we know why.
Exactly. All right, guys. Well, let's get into the first away mission here. This is, of course, episode 234 of Union Federation. We are discussing Star Trek Deep Space Nine Q-less, which came out in 1993. Okay, our first mission report is something that's been brought to our attention earlier on, and we've been incorporating it since, thanks to our lovely counselor, Amy Nelson. You mentioned there was a bunch of great quotes in all of these, and lines in all these Q episodes, and I wanted to give you guys a chance to shout out some. I borrowed some from IMDb as well, but Q episodes, we always get good Q quotes. We also get good lines from the cast members as well, specifically Deep Space Nine in this one. Gary, was there any quotes to you that stood out to you in this episode?
Heavy is the burden of being me, which I actually coincidentally say it to by other people a lot myself. We won't get into that. Yeah, that was. What
about you? What about you, Amy? Do you have any memorable quotes from this one?
I liked, and I'm gonna steal one of yours here with the where did it go? Oh yeah, with Sisko and O'Brien. I really like when Sisko is like talking about Vosh. Somehow she doesn't seem to be his type, and Chief O'Brien's like, the captain likes a good challenge, sir. Like, that sums up Picard just perfectly. And I love hearing that TNG connection. So it's good.
I'll get to you, your thoughts on one here, Kyle. I just want to shoot this one out really quick. As Vash says to Q, says, "You are the one who almost got me killed on Eric Kang 7. And they weren't exactly thrilled to see you on Brax either. What did they call you? The God of Lies?" Q said, "They meant it affectionately." Kyle, is there any quotes that jump out at you, sir?
Come on, it is the most Q moment in this episode when Chief O'Brien says, "Why don't you do something constructive for a change like torment Cardassians?" Q, "Do I know you?" O'Brien from the Enterprise. "Enterprise? Oh yes. Weren't you one of the little people?" Come on, that is the most Q moment in this entire episode.
I love watching all of Deep Space Nine and marathoning it a while ago. Quark became one of my favorite characters, and I love the line that he has when he's talking to Odo. And Quark says, "I have nothing to hide. I'm selling quality merchandise to select clientele." And Odo says, "And what makes them so select? They're all ridiculously wealthy and not too bright." Love me some of those lines. There's some good lines in there. All right, well, let's go ahead and get to the first main mission report here. All right, so the first part that we always like to talk about here on the main episode discussion, this is Q-less. We are in Deep Space Nine right now, and I want to kind of ask you guys, what was it like, first of all, returning to Deep Space Nine? and this episode specifically? And also, was there any subplot scenes that stood out for you? Amy, been gone for a few weeks. Let us know what you think about this.
Coming to this episode, I just was cringy a lot. Just the whole sexism, and it really, Bashir was, again, as Kyle says, you just see the progression of how well the characters have grown, because Bashir is just painstakingly, disgustingly gross around her. And thankfully, we women do not have to put up with that anymore. So it just is just, ugh. So that whole subplot of that going on, well, I'm glad he was asleep for most of the episode. Let's just
Gary, what say you about returning to Deep Space Nine and any subplots here in this episode?
Well, I actually have to say, I think the sexism for me was the most enjoyable part of the episode.
Oh.
I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. I couldn't let that opportunity go. As I said before, it's loving Deep Space Nine as I do. I mean, a lot of season when you realize it's finding its feet, finding its way. Bashir obviously becomes far more than just the pickup artist, the lame pickup artist that he tries to be in this. I did like, though, in that scene, Amy, though, I loved Olive O'Brien's take behind him. He's like looking over him going, I can't believe what I'm sitting here listening to. That was kind of enjoyable. I did like, as you said, Kevin, it seems like they were really already totally zeroing in on Quark, like what makes it work, the avarice, he's good for comedy moments, and he seems like, even at this point in the series, the most fully realized of the main characters. And as far as Q goes, I did have a lot of problems with the episode, but I did think that the Q Vosh repartee was good in this episode. I enjoyed that.
Gotcha. All right. Andrew Semple joins the chat here. Says, greetings from Scotland. My favorite country to visit, Andrew. Love that place. Been there 3 times myself. Great country. All right. Kyle, what about you? It was like returning to Deep Space Nine for you. Any subplots you liked?
So I mentioned it a little earlier. It was a little rough returning to Deep Space Nine Season 1, which is really my least favorite season of DS9. Amy mentions it. Bashir is just annoying. And this is something that early on, this is why one of the reasons why I was having a hard time getting to Deep Space Nine. The characters were just so underdeveloped at this point. It does feel, even when we go back and look at the Q episodes from early on in Next Generation, the characters felt so much more developed already in those early episodes of Next Generation than they did in DS9, and it shows. And I think it's really, like Gary said, though, this show it took a lot longer to find its footing and find its place. And it didn't help when in the aspect of you have episodes like this early on where they're throwing in the next gen stuff just to try to boost the ratings and get people to watch it. And it feels a little forced. And I think that's kind of what happens with this episode, because there are some good ideas. And I'm just going to throw this out right now, and I can dive it into a little deeper when we cover other areas. But there is such a missed opportunity of a Q-Cisco relationship that is so different than Picard and Q, because I can see Q looking at Cisco, and they even kind of hint at it a little bit in this episode, as looking at Cisco as a totally different challenge. And come on, who doesn't want to see Q face off with Hawk? I'm just saying.
Yeah, he's still he's not quite looking like Hawk yet from Spencer for Hire, but he does shave the head later on. So yeah, good stuff there, Kyle. One of the things that I really like this, it of course had to be done to have some connective tissue from Deep Space Nine to TNG, or more specific to Enterprise, is the moments that we had with Chief O'Brien. And I feel like Chief O'Brien, being one of the cast members that carried over to Deep Space Nine from TNG, and of course serving on the Enterprise, was, I think, a very smart move. And O'Brien had some really good moments. And what's interesting too is my favorite episode of this season took place right before this one. If you guys remember, that's the one with Tosk, who was the first visitor through the wormhole in Captive Pursuit. And I have, if you're watching the video, I'm holding a toy of Tosk right here. And I'm a big fan of Tosk, and also to that episode. And if you want to have some extra fun, go to Instagram and check out Traveling Tosk. That's another Instagram that I do, and I take Tosk around, and he gets some fun pictures in my travels, including Scotland. He's been to Scotland several times, and he's had some fun over there. So Andrew from Scotland says, which season episode number is this? This is season 1, episode 6. This what's that?
7.
Is it 7? Okay. Because right before that was the Tosk one, if I remember correctly, or a couple before it anyway. So make sure you check that out. But yeah, so I love O'Brien in this. I think the connective tissue, as I mentioned, is a good thing. That and even though he doesn't have a scene with Vosh, obviously it was implied that he met her when she came to visit the Enterprise, and he knew who, of course. She was, but also he was the one that told Cisco, "I just saw Q." And of course they all got the briefings on Q at one time or another. So there we go. Well, let's go ahead and hit the next mission report. All right, so this is the one that we always talk about. We bring on these shows here for the Q episodes. And the second mission report is your thoughts on the main Q storyline throughout this episode and its impact on the Star Trek timeline. Specifically to this episode, Q chases Vash to Deep Space Nine. And if you remember the famous Cupid episode, Vash ends up leaving the Enterprise with Q, and Q ends up taking her on some adventures. Of course, as we find out in this episode, she's run a little tired of Q. So give me your thoughts on this. We'll start with you, Amy.
It's not, is this really a Q episode? Because the crystal is what's causing the drain of the power drain. And what else? And it's not even Q's fault. Or is it because Vosh brings it back and she was in the Gamma Quadrant because of him? I mean, that's a pretty far stretch to go for that. So I find it questionable. It's not really a Q episode because he's not causing any havoc. He's not messing with anyone. He's just pining after Vosh, which is weird. It doesn't make sense to me.
We'll get into that later. That's a good observation there, Amy. What about you, Kyle?
I actually agree with Amy. The Q plot in this feels very much like a B plot in this episode. The A plot really seems to be the power drain on DS9, what's going on with Vosh and the Quark relationship. The Q thing it almost feels like it's thrown in, and I think we're going to have some trivia later that might explain a little bit of why that is. But I can see where I'll be honest with you, it feels like John de Lancie's kind of just going through the motions with his performance as Q. There's just not the energy of him as Q that we're used to seeing on the Next Generation. And it's this land of missed opportunities. He has actually great chemistry with Vosh, but with anybody else, it's just it feels like he's struggling a little bit. And again, I would have loved to have seen him have a little bit more interaction. I would have loved to have seen him have a conversation with Dax. I would have loved a Q Odo scene. I really would have. I think that could have been highly entertaining.
That's a good point.
And again, just so many missed opportunities here, because I don't think I really wonder when the first time they wrote the script if Q was even involved.
Interesting. We'll talk about that. That's a good question. Gary, what about you?
Okay, well, I'm going to assume that when you say the main plot, because as
the main Q storyline.
Oh, the main Q storyline. Because as Amy and Kyle have both said, it's hard to tell what's the main story and what's the B story. Mm-hmm. But for the main Q plot line, it seems like like they're off on their own thing, completely disconnected from the station. I mean, that it doesn't even necessarily really even need to take place on the station. I could never, honestly, when I was rewatching it, I could never really pin down why exactly she is so ticked off at Q. There's one line about, well, you left me or something, but I mean, she's an archaeologist that has always felt more comfortable being on her own, making her own rules for her own life. So I'm not really sure. And you know, anytime that he may have put her in danger, he was there to kind of save her from it. So that was confusing to me. That made it seem like an artificial conflict between the two of them. And as far as if I'm going to include the resolution as part of the main Q story, which I guess is kind of is, because everything centers around what Vosh brought back from the Gamma Quadrant. It seems like on the one hand we have an object that looks like something else, but it's actually a life form. Where have we seen that before? Well, there you go. In Encounter at Farpoint, which was the first Q episode on
and the
TNG,
creature looked pretty much the same
on TNG. Now the first Q episode on DS9 has the same thing. And again, the setup where, just like in True Q, the last episode we covered, Q seems like he's the cause of an external problem, but turns out not to be. So it seems like whatever they're putting Q into in this episode, we've already been there, done that. You know, it's not pushing what the character can do or is involved in along. It's basically kind of like Q's greatest hits in terms of the actual plot that he and Vosh are involved in. Yeah, one more thing. It seems like, I will say that turning Vosh into this, and I know we're going to cover more of the dynamics later, but in this, I'm just going to cover one specific scene. Him turning Vosh into this kind of disease-ridden old woman, which reminded me of Susan Oliver in the Cage, you know, when she all of a sudden goes from this beautiful woman to this kind of decrepit. That seems to be felt to me pretty extreme even for Q. That's like physical punishment that even goes beyond Q's kind of parameters. So that felt odd.
Interesting. Yeah. For the Q storyline for me too, it's funny too, because it's been a while since I've seen this episode. And I was looking forward to returning to Deep Space Nine and getting familiar with the characters, specifically the first season, where the actors are still kind of working on them and the relationships are still kind of being worked on between the crew. And I don't know. I saw it through a different lens because we've been watching all of the TNG episodes of the Q storylines and seeing him get familiar with that crew, specifically, getting close with Picard and Data and stuff like that. And it was interesting, Vash, as I mentioned, is one of my favorite characters, and I've crushed on her and been a big fan of that character. And it was interesting, and it seemed right to have her return to Deep Space Nine with Q, because they've been off gallivanting around other quadrants and sectors and stuff like that for 2 years. So it was nice to have that kind of connective tissue come back. But I found it a little less satisfying regarding this Q storyline, and I'm going to go into that more a little bit later because of some trivia that I found out there. But we still did get some interesting and fun Q moments, and I wanted to do that for the next mission report. Now, with Q episodes, we get good, funny Q moments at times. And I want to ask you guys, is there a Q scene or character moment that best stands out for you in this episode? Gary, we're going to go right back to you, sir.
The one that comes first to mind is during the boxing scene when it first starts and Q's going, oh, the old fisticuffs. And Cisco looks around and just goes, what? Cisco's reaction just made that scene for me, like, just reacting to the absurdity of it.
That's a good one. Kyle, what about you, sir?
You know, I have to admit, the scene where he basically makes Bashir sleepy, and just to keep him away from Bosch, is actually pretty funny for a jealous boyfriend Q almost.
That is a good one. He had like a really good rest. I could actually use Q's power on that this last week. It would have been great.
Yeah, no kid. I sympathize.
Andrew Semple, our good friend in Scotland, says, I'd love to stay with you guys, but it's 2:30 in the morning here. A Scotsman needs his rest. Enjoy the rest of the review, guys. Thank you so much for joining us, Andrew. Real appreciate you. Amy, what about you? Is there a Q moment that stands out for you?
Yeah, it's the boxing one for me too. What makes Q, his costumes, his love of costumes is still going through. So I guess that's, a thread that we are continuing and just how ridiculous to have these old time it just perfect. And his mustache, like if you're watching on YouTube, like that's the perfect image with his little mustache.
His old-timey mustache. I love that.
Yes.
Kyle, you got a comment?
Well, every time at the boxing scene, so it makes me want to ask a quick question here because it ties into the boxing scene. Hughes acts like really so shocked about how Cisco reacts to him compared to Picard. Do you guys feel like that should have set up more episodes with Q and Cisco, where like Q's goal is to like break Cisco out of his shell, or not so angry Cisco or boring Cisco?
Yeah,
I feel like that was a missed opportunity that they set up in that scene.
Yeah, you're right, because he wants that witty banter, which he enjoys with Picard so much and the rest of that crew. And I think that he is testing this crew to a certain aspect. And I think there was, him coming back would have been entertaining. But Deep Space Nine got darker too, and Q episodes tend to lend to more of a comedic part of it. And I don't know when that would have been a good time to bring him back, but I would have loved to have seen a little bit more of that. What about you? What do you think to Kyle's question there, Gary?
Overall, it felt like, I don't know if Q was trying to determine for himself whether Cisco was going to be a challenge like Picard initially was, but overall, it just seems like that Q just feels like more dismissive of Cisco and really the entire crew. Like he doesn't even really, care, really about any of them. It doesn't feel like he respects Cisco like he, came to respect Picard. And so it seems like that, Cisco's obviously just, doesn't want to deal with Q at all because of the crisis on the station. And no, I agree with Kyle. It's right. It's hard to get a handle on what Q wants from Cisco, what Cisco wants from Q, because and I'm going to be cynical, Kyle. Part of that scene with Cisco's reaction, I feel I'm going to be, whether it's true or not, my cynical reaction is that when Cisco goes and hauls off on Q, that was made for the trailer. Do you know what I mean? So that the trailer, the coming attractions trailer, could have a scene next time on Deep Space Nine, and then it ends with Cisco laying Q out, and everybody's going, "Oh, gotta watch that." You know what I mean? That's cynical, but part of me, because it doesn't just seem to fit tonally in what's going on.
It's a good point.
I honestly would have loved to have seen an episode of DS9 with Cisco trying to explain baseball to Q.
Yeah, that'd be good. Amy, what about you regarding Kyle's inquiry?
Yeah. Oh shoot, I just had it, and then your baseball comment. Okay. Wait, what? Just refresh my memory what you were just saying.
Kyle, go ahead and say it again.
I just feel like that they should have had Q come to DS9 at least once or twice more, because I would have thought Q would see Cisco as a different kind of challenge than Picard, with his goal to kind of break Cisco out of his shell, not have angry Cisco time and just
Right,
different
because we
approach.
got to have that with Picard, especially in Tapestry, which we haven't covered yet, but like, and Picard, I felt, was just as rude as Cisco is. Like, I'm hearing Cisco and hearing Picard, like they're both have this tone in their voice, like, go away, Q. So I didn't understand. Yeah, like it's the same way that Picard talked to Q. So I didn't.
I think it would have been an interesting, different relationship dynamic between Cisco and Q than Picard and Q, because Cisco would have handled Q infinitely different than Picard would have.
Definitely. Yeah.
Well, but I mean, I agree with you, but I mean, essentially at heart, Picard's a diplomat. And at this point in the series, Cisco is still so damaged that he doesn't want to deal with some, godlike trickster who's potentially could destroy the station. It's like he and Picard are just so completely opposite in their histories that I think the dynamic is clearly going to be different.
Yeah. I know I've kind of stolen something here. Just Kevin, one other quick thought. I would have thought Q would have been fascinated with Cisco being the emissary.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I also think too that from what we learned from Cisco later on, him making some decisions that I think the rest of not only the Federation would have agreed with or disagreed with. I think that the less diplomatic approach he's done, as we see later on in the series, is not what Picard would have done. And that's what we liked about the darker turn that Deep Space Nine took, especially during the Dominion War. Yeah. And you know what I'm talking about, Gary. How hard he gets later on. So yeah. But I just wanted to chime in. I really like the scenes where let me bring back to the table here. Is the Q moment that I liked was the one with Quark comes in to Vash's quarters, and Q's like not having it, just makes him disappear, and then Vash has him bring him back, and then as it brings him back as Q disappears, so Quark doesn't see that, but Quark has that little disoriented look on his face.
Yeah.
And like, does he realize what happened? Or did something he have like a brain freeze? I was just kind of curious what was going through Quark's mind at that time. Did he realize that he had disappeared into nothingness and then was brought back? I was kind of wondered about that.
And then he immediately leaps back into his business dealings.
Yeah.
It's like, whatever, but here's why I'm here. Before we get on to the next one, I just want to say, here's my biggest missed opportunity. And when I say it, I don't know if all you guys will agree with me. There should have so desperately been a scene between Q and Garrick. I would have loved that.
I think that would have been, like Q and Spock debate type thing. I feel that's a good call, because as we know, Garrick becomes a fan favorite throughout the rest of the series and stuff. So that's a good call. Well, we've actually touched on some general discussion outside of the main mission reports here, but I got one I'm going to give to you guys, because this is a good one. All right, so this is mission report 4, this final one. This is where we have a general discussion of anything that you guys haven't brought up that you have questions about. But I need to bring a kind of a big one to the table here. We've kind of touched on this before. This originally was in my notes for you guys for the number 1 of the 4 trivia questions, but I decided to pull it and put it into this general discussion part, because it was something that was in the trivia that caught my mind after I read it, and then I rewatched this episode. And I got 3 little bonus trivias here that are all kind of tied and interconnected to the question that I want to ask you guys, and the kind of feeling that I'm getting with this discussion of this episode. The first bonus trivia is Hannah Louise Shearer, one of the writers of this episode. Original pitch for this episode involved Vash, but not Q. And then Robert Hewitt Wolf wrote this episode before he joined the writing staff of the series. So this is where I get this information through IMDb and stuff. These are contributors to this script basically here and this story. is Hannah Louise Shearer saying that it involved Vash originally and not Q. And Robert says he wrote this episode before he joined the writing staff of the series. But the main thing I wanted to bring up here, which is related to this here, is John de Lancie named this as his least favorite of all of the Star Trek episodes he ever appeared in, saying that he was feeling that Q was depicted as nothing more than a skirt chaser, and that the story's events would have played out exactly the same even if Q had never gotten involved. So I thought that was an interesting quote, and I got that through IMDb. I'll be perfectly honest here, but that feels like something de Lancie would say. And so I'm going to go as if he actually did say this, and this is truth. So I wanted to ask you guys, and I'm getting the tone from you guys about this episode, and I know you've mentioned this, Amy, as well, regarding this topic. And as I mentioned, that this just felt kind of weird for a Q episode. And Gary, I'm going to quote you on a previous episode of these Q episodes. The episode Deja Q, where Q becomes human as a punishment and lands on the Enterprise naked and then has to, work with the crew and stuff like that. And you said, quote, and I'm kind of paraphrasing here for you, Gary, is you said it shows how versatile the Q character is for the next generation writers. Now, you just said writers, but I did say TNG writers because that was a TNG episode. So I want to ask you guys, knowing that in this episode's writers, we had Hannah Louise Shearer and Robert Hewitt Wolf. The TNG writers for that episode that you quoted on, Gary, was Richard Danis. He wrote the episode. The staff writer was Ronald D. Moore. So I don't know how much input he had, but the main episode is written by this gentleman, Richard Danis, for the TNG episode. So my question to you guys is, did the DS9 writers fail the Q character, and how? Who would like to go first? Kyle.
I don't think they necessarily failed the Q character. What this episode feels like to me is Q was crowbarred into this episode. It's like, oh, we have this episode, but it's missing a little something, and we need to get more eyes on DS9. Let's call John de Lancie. Let's put Q in this episode. We got Vash here. We can tie that in. And he felt so crowbarred in. He felt like he was literally in a different adventure, a different storyline than everybody else on the station. And it's glaring. It honestly is glaring. And the only times it even feels like he kind of fits in is when he's having his conversations with O'Brien. Otherwise, I think if I was to go back and look at it, I am willing to bet the intention was, okay, we have this episode, we have that Vosh here. Let's have a John de Lancie cameo. Let's see Q really quick just so we can do a wink nod to that episode. And instead, the writers were like, we've got John de Lancie. Oh, we got to do something with him. Yeah. And so they were trying to put the Q-shaped peg through the DS9-shaped hole, and it just didn't fit properly. And they kind of forced it in. And then it threw everything off. And I think this is, like Gary said too, it's the aspect of trying to get DS9 on its footing, and by doing that, hey, how much TNG can we throw in so the TNG people will view this while it grows?
I feel there might be some truth to that, Kyle, especially after if Hannah Louise Shearer's original pitch for this episode involved Vash and not Q. What do you think, Amy? Do you think the writers failed the Q character in this?
Yeah, well, if you look at Robert Hewitt Wolf saying that he wrote this episode even before coming on Deep Space Nine as a writer, like, okay, that makes sense because this obviously is, picked up from Cupid, and it's a great conclusion of that story, but it also launches into when we see him in Voyager, when he does find a committed relationship and does become a father. Like, he's in this marriage, and it does start here, which basically is Cupid, where he is fascinated with this relationship that Vash has and Picard have together. Like, so this thread of Q wanting a relationship trying with Vosh and then being successful. I think maybe the execution was poor, but if long run, I think okay.
Amy, what I'm going to say that there was, I think that's some writer correction after the fact.
Oh,
It's
with
like
the Voyager.
with the Voyager episodes, I think
Yeah.
there was some writer correction after the fact. Okay, we got to fix this up. But if you just look at this episode as it is standalone, it just
Yeah,
the
it
episode was
is.
awkward.
Yeah, very much so. And I can't believe that Robert Hewitt Wolf would say Q chasing Vosh is an entire episode that he would write. So there had to have been way more giving up on his storyline to fit in the time limit, I'm guessing, because there's no way that that's an episode.
What do you think, Gary? Did writers fail Q?
I think that the two quotes that you read were very telling. The fact that the first draft of this didn't include, only included Vosh, basically, as Kyle was explaining, for the purpose of what was originally the main story, which is the power losses and everything going on in the station, that Q is entirely extraneous to requirements. And so, and I'm sure that for an actor, who came at this point to play such a beloved character, to be, probably annoyed that, okay, well, what's my, he doesn't really have any agency in this episode. He's kind of like a lurker, on the sides and the edges, kind of making comments and kind of seeing what's going on. He doesn't drive the crisis at all in this story. He doesn't cause it. He doesn't develop it. And he's irrelevant to the resolution. So I agree with de Lancie's comment, assuming, as you said, Kevin, that he actually said it. I think he's 100% dead accurate because, he probably realized, I don't even need to be, for the way the story resolves, I didn't even need to be here at all. The one element that I think maybe explain, and then you have the whole, getting rid of the romantic rival, which feels weird. You have the whole, a little bit of revenge on Vosh, turning her into that disease-ridden woman, which seems just, over the top. But the one quote from Q in this that I wish if they'd seen this, they go, huh, that seems like there's something there. Let's work with that, is when he tells her, seeing the universe through your eyes, I was able to experience wonder. So if they powered back on some of the pettiness and made it more of, he doesn't want to lose Vosh because he knows everything, he's seen everything a million times, but now with her, he's able to experience things he's never seen, which you think, okay, that's a valid point that's interesting, that would have explained some of his actions with Vosh, not a skirt chaser. I think that's reducing it too much. But I think actually that line, you could say, is key, and they should have taken that and used that as the foundation for how they treated Q in this, that there was a specific reason that he wanted her to stay, which is because he's experiencing things he never did before. That's interesting. And they should have done more with that. That would have made this, it still would have been totally disconnected from what was happening on the station with the power losses. But as far as the Q Vosh story goes, it would have made it feel a little bit more cohesive and fit in with the kind of Q chronology that we've been going through.
There's some good points there, Gary, and it made me think about kind of what, Kyle, you were touching on earlier, is that Q character kind of felt crowbarred into this to either get ratings or get some, familiar TNG fans wanting to, say, okay, I'll check out Deep Space Nine, blah, blah, blah. But I started thinking about, especially the last part of this quote that John de Lancie supposedly said, that Q depicted as nothing but a skirt chaser, but that the story's events would have played out exactly the same even if Q had never gotten involved. So I started thinking about, what if that was the case? What if Q wasn't in this episode? What if it was just Vosh showing up? Would that mean there would have been would too much of Amy's, not wanting to see more of Bashir hitting on her? Would that been more of the subplot, or would they have written Picard to come back and get her, or her actually going to Earth and seeing that with the Deep Space Nine crew, because the Daystam Institute and all that? What would they have done more? Would there have been more relationship with Quark? And honestly, that would have been cool to have Vosh come back and deal with Quark again, not in a romantic way, but as in a dealing shenanigans way with goods and stuff like that. I know it's really got me thinking about that now that you kind of mentioned that, Kyle, about how if Q wasn't in this episode and if it wasn't kind of felt like it was forced in,
what if Cisco had been given orders to get her back to the Daystrom Institute? Like, you are not to let her leave the station. She must come back to the Daystrom Institute. Yeah, that could have been a whole subplot of what was going on with her, because she was talking about, oh, do I go back to Earth? Do I the adventuring? And Quark was playing really up on that. You throw in that kind of dynamic instead of Q, I think it gets even more interesting.
Honestly, I think that removing Q and leaving the main story be, she shows up, the auction still happens, there's power drains. I don't think that by itself is substantial enough, with nothing else added, to carry an episode. My guess is they would have probably added another C story, like a 2 to 3 scene C story with, I don't know, Jake or Bashir or something like that as a time filler, because just Vosh showing up is, she's not enough by herself without a Picard type figure there to kind of drive a full episode. So I think they would have filled the time with something else. I think that she would have probably made some kind of reference to, I think the ending would have been the same. She's really did want to go to Earth, but then Quark's last little temptation of going to this other culture would have been too much, and she'd go. I think that would have been played out exactly the same. I just think time-wise, they would have come up with some more kind of, I think adding more scenes of her with Bashir or whatever. I just don't think that would have made this episode I don't think that would have worked at all.
Kyle?
You want to fill time. Here's another thought. What if a race comes through the Gamma Quadrant looking for what she stole and ends up on the station, and we start even just laying a little bit more grounds about the Gamma Quadrant that way? Would have been really fascinating as well.
I almost feel
I like that.
That would be cool too. In addition to what I think that would have been a fun ongoing storyline that I previously mentioned is Quark actually having that partnership with Vosh, and when it came to other episodes, she can kind of come in and they can just kind of have a witty banter, whether they like each other, maybe they become partners, and then you get Odo in there, and there was some opportunities, as you said earlier, Kyle, some missed opportunities with this. But if we didn't have Q, I think I'm just going to say it. I think as of the Q episodes, this is probably my least favorite. What do you guys think?
I think it is my least favorite because it's not a Q episode. Q's in it, but it's not a Q episode.
Are we all in agreement on that? Yeah,
it's Q-less.
It's Q-less.
Now I understand.
There's your answer, Amy.
Union Fed.
There's your answer.
There's less of Q.
One more thing. The more I'm thinking about this, the more I think that what I would have done if they removed Q. I could see that this could have easily become like a Quark episode, because take what the suggestion of you get Kyle, some other kind of malevolent, shady character coming through in pursuit of her because of what she took. So you have Quark kind of like, he's trying to get this auction going. He's now got to distract and mislead all the people away from Vosh to kind of, protect his own interests. So he's got to keep coming up with all these things about misleading them. He's got to mislead Odo, who's wondering, well, what are you doing with all this stuff? You could have easily just like turned this thing a little bit into kind of like almost a semi farcical kind of like, Quark trying to keep all these plates spinning to kind of get this auction going, still keep the station problems as like the B story in terms of, well, how are they going to solve it? But yeah, you could have made this kind of a really strong like Quark episode in this where he's the driver of it.
Yeah, there you go. That's good stuff right there. Man, let's go back in a time machine and make some suggestions. There we go. All right, guys. Well, we got one more thing before we get out of here, and we're going to discuss our MVP. So the last mission report we have here is the Star Trek MVP, or as sometimes Amy might remind us, our least valuable player. I want to know, who is your episode cast or guest MVP? Which stood out for you? And of course, this is Deep Space Nine. I got the picture of the Deep Space Nine cast photo there. Oh, they look so young. Look at them. And of course, Q there. And I want you guys to each give me, who do you think, who's the MVP? Who did you like best in this? Kyle, I'm going to start with you, sir.
Oh, this is a tough one because I think there's two real standouts. But I think I'm going to go Chief O'Brien here. I think Chief O'Brien actually was kind of the glue character of this episode because of the connections with Vosh to Next Generation. And you see Cisco kind of leaning on that a little bit in those connections to get information. And I think that made it more interesting, and that's something else I wish they would play it up on this episode. I think Quark is running real close 1B to O'Brien's 1A in this episode.
Yeah. Amy, what about you? Who's your MVP of the episode?
All right,
or
now
least valuable player.
Well, this is my MVP. And now that she is not anywhere near Picard, I really think Vosh did a great job. Jennifer Hetrick is gorgeous, as beautiful as usual. And
yeah, she is.
Yeah, she... I mean, every scene she's in, she's like this glowing, mysterious, awesome person. And she's the same with almost everyone. So it's just, she did so well.
All right. What about you, Gary? Who's your MVP?
Well, I do want to say quickly about Vosh is that I love that Vosh here knows precisely the effect that she has on Bashir, on Quark, and she's
playing everybody.
Yes. And she shamelessly uses that to kind of advance her own end. So that's fun to watch. But I am actually going to take Kyle's B and make that my A, because I actually think Quark is my MVP, because for me, all of the most memorable, funny, enjoyable scenes are with Quark. Like when Vosh, interestingly enough, when Vosh defaults to her archaeology thing, and I'm just trying to give cultural context. And I thought, well, there's Picard rubbing off on her. But then, he immediately comes and he goes, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And he goes like, "Friends, look at this beautiful." Every Quark scene was a standout to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was kind of go between Quark and Vosh, and you guys both made great cases for both. But my crush on Jennifer Hetrick and Vosh, so I'm just going to say Vosh for reasons. And I do like that scene where she's inventorying everything that she has. Mm-hmm. I just thought that was a good moment for Vosh there. Kyle, do you have another comment on the cast?
Yeah, I just want to also give an LVP for this episode.
Ooh.
Now, we could go Bashir for general creepiness in this episode.
Agreed.
Truthfully, the LVP of this episode is Q, because you have one of the greatest characters in Star Trek history completely wasted. I mean, and I'm not faulting John de Lancie for that, but that makes it, when you have that great of a character and he's just kind of a sideline character through the episode, it's a waste, and it makes him the LVP of this episode.
Yeah.
Less valuable character of the episode. All right. I can't argue with that, Kyle. That's a good call. Yeah. Since we've been kind of discussing that anyway, I think we all agree this is so far our least favorite Q episode that we have covered. So yeah, good call there. All right, guys, that was good stuff here. This is a Union Federation podcast here on the Fandom Podcast Network and the BQN. We are discussing all the Star Trek Q fan collective episodes from 87 to 2001. Want to get your guys' final thoughts here. Kyle, I'm going to go right back to you here.
I think this is, when we look back at this particular episode, this is, oh, it's the first season of DS9. Let's put the familiar faces on there. Let's get the TNG crowd watching it. And it just falls flat. And the sad part is, as we've discussed through this episode, I think there's some really interesting story there they could have done if they weren't so desperate just to get John de Lancie on the episode to bring in some face ratings. And I think that's what ultimately this episode goes down as, is this is a ratings grab episode.
Good call. And Kyle, how can we get a hold of you as we wrap things up here?
Oh, well, you can find me, of course, all over the Fandom Podcast Network. I've had a little vacation, a little work stuff going on, but I will be back here for more Q episodes here on the Union Federation. Gary goes back to cleaning the P corner next week. He is the low man on the totem pole. But I took my vacation punishment as a good Union Federation officer would. So I just want to throw out, too, real quick, because this is the Union Federation. We talked the Orville, too. I've been doing a rewatch of Friday Night Lights, and I forgot how good Adrian Palicki was in that show. And, of course, she was our wonderful in the Orville as well. I just need to throw that out there. I blame Kevin and his wife and our good friend Lacey for why I'm watching Friday Night Lights again. But you can also find me, too, on Twitter and on Blue Sky at AKyleW. And you can find me on Instagram at AKyleFandom. And I also might be a new entrant on The Running Man.
Well said. Gary, what about you, sir? What are your final thoughts on this episode?
Well, I will say that I really enjoyed the discussion we had, because I have to admit, as I was like rewatching it, even as I got toward the end of the episode, I was going, what are we going to talk about on this for this episode? Because it didn't seem like there was really like a lot of meat to it. And I think that one thing that shows is that Q is a great character, but you have to give him something to play. Q does not work well as an ancillary character. Q needs to be the main focus, the main driver of the conflict of whatever episode that he's in. It doesn't matter which series. When he's an ancillary character that the story could function just as well without, then obviously that's going to turn out to be a problem.
Yeah, well said. Amy, first of all, Gary, where can we find you?
On X, Gary _A_retro, Discord as RetroDoc, and on Facebook as Gary Akers, and also on the Fandom Podcast Network on Thursdays on Type 40, and on Saturdays on the Spacebook.
Awesome. Amy, thank you. It's good to have you back. Give me your final thoughts on this episode. You've had some good ones.
So if you remember at the very beginning when I gave the IMDb score of 6.7, I was like, whoa. I thought that was too high, actually.
I'm not arguing that point.
Which is a little surprising, I have to say, for IMDb, because usually I'm like, this episode was way better than what they gave it. But so
are you thinking like a 5.5 out of 10 or something like that? Yeah. Okay.
I would. And because of all of the things that we said. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Amy, by the end of the week after this stream, that score is going to be even lower.
Yeah.
we might be getting a call later in the week, Kevin. We should be prepared.
Oh, God. Well, Amy, also tell us how we can get a hold of you, because, of course, this show can be found on the FPN and the BQN. How can we find you?
Yes. Okay. Please follow us over there on BQN. We've got Trek Masters going on, the View Screen, our live Sunday morning talk show about Star Trek. We've got our one last episode this Sunday, so join us there. You can also hear me. I will be going back to All Good Things, which is another podcast. And you can find me at BQN Podcast on Blue Sky and Instagram. I, Amy Nelson, am in our Facebook group, and that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Perfect. My name is Kevin, and you can find me at Spartan_Phoenix on all of the socials, which include X and Instagram and all the other ones there, including Blue Sky and Discord, I think, as well, and also Letterboxd, among others. First of all, join our Union Federation Facebook group, where you can find all kinds of great discussion about, of course, Star Trek and the Orville. Union Federation is also on Instagram and X, so make sure you guys check that out as well. And make sure you also subscribe to the YouTube channel and check us out here on Monday nights. We're continuing our live recordings here, and we, of course, enjoy anyone that likes to participate in the chat as well. And also, wait, I want to give you a little tease what's happening next week here. Next week, we are discussing probably one of the more favorite Q episodes, and just episodes in general of Star Trek Next Generation, and that is Tapestry. That's when, of course, Picard has a moment of death, but Q lets him know what could have been if he had done things differently. So that'll be episode 235 of the Union Federation. Anyway, just my quick thoughts. Rewatching this episode, I had a different perspective on it. We've discussed all that, but it was nice to return to Deep Space Nine and of what is to come, and all of the things that they did a really good job of, like, working on one, laying some stuff out in one episode and then continuing it, and having these little episode arcs too, whether it was a 2-episode arc, a 3-episode arc, or 4-episode arc. And that was one of the things that we really did enjoy about Deep Space Nine. And of course, with the changelings and the Dominion War. And I'm just trying to figure out where Q could have come in and fit and done things. And I do wish we could have seen more of Vosh. I would like to have seen more live action Vosh. So that's just my bit there.
It would have been, I realize it would have been, would it have worked, Kevin, you think? Because, every year on Deep Space Nine, we got an annual Mirror Universe episode. Do you think Q would have worked in one of the Mirror Universe episodes?
The writers were clever enough to probably make something like that work. But what would he have done? That would be the big question there.
I think I would have preferred to see Q stay away from the Mirror Universe.
Yeah, that would be an interesting challenge for the writers' room. But yeah, I mean, I think Deep Space Nine did a good job with the alternate universe. Yeah. There was some very entertaining stuff. But what if he came back in the final season with Vic Fontaine and did a number? Just kind of having a fun episode. Something like that. I don't know if that would have worked or not, but I would have liked to have seen one more. So anyway, guys, thank you.
The episode.
Oh, go ahead.
I've got to follow that. You know what the episode would have been called, Kevin?
What's that?
I've got a crush on Q.
Ah!
On that note, I've got a reservation in a hollow suite.
Guys, thank you so much. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Gary. This has been a great discussion of one of the Q episodes, specifically hanging out at Deep Space Nine. Thank you guys, of course, for watching, and please continue to follow us the next few weeks here, discussing Monday nights, 6 o'clock Pacific and 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll see you guys next time. Live long and prosper, and without a doubt, we are the weirdest ship in the fleet. See you guys next time.